Well, look, I'm so honored to be part of this project again this year. I've been engaged from the beginning of the Canadian Hillman Awards, and thanks to Alex and Bruce and the whole team for getting this going. It's a hugely important addition to our constellation here in Canada. I have a new connection in a way now because since I started with Hillman, of course, my former union, the CAW, has been part of forming a new union called Unifor, which is Canada's largest media union. So we now represent tens of thousands of journalists and others working in the media industry, and very proud to be working to enhance the lives and freedoms and protections of the people who are writing these stories. I've learned a lot about the media industry since the formation of Unifor. I used to think that the auto industry had it tough, and then I started to learn about the media industry. So that tells you something. But ironically, while the economics of journalism have never been harder, and they're definitely harder than auto or any of the other so-called basket cases out there, the need for independent, principled journalism has never been greater. In the face of the fragmentation of society, the slice and dice approach to politics, dog whistle politics, and the loss of legitimacy of our traditional institutions, the importance of principled, investigative, free journalism, I honestly think has never been greater in our history as a country. And I do want to pay tribute right now to all of the journalists who struggle against incredible odds, both economic and political, to publish the truth and keep us informed. Let me tell you, a society which depends solely on tweets from Jason Kenney to inform us about little things like war and the rule of law is a society in big trouble indeed. So luckily we're not there, at least not yet. So despite the economic challenges and the political barriers facing journalism today, I must say I was so impressed by both the quantity but also especially the quality of the submissions which have grown and expanded every year. And I quite literally was moved to tears sitting at my kitchen table reading through the box of submissions, moved to tears by the stories that were told in each of the submissions this year. I was also moved to tears by the fact that we, the judges, had to pick one as the winner. And it was hard to pick a winner, but in a way it wasn't hard to pick a winner. There was one journalistic project in that box of submissions that immediately showed its deep and lasting influence. It was a story that was pursued with tenacity and integrity and courage that changed not just our politics, but I suspect and hope our full culture. The Toronto Star's explosive expose on the sexual assault allegations against Jian Ghomeshi shocked Canadians, of course. It became a news story in and of itself. It was incredibly hard to believe at first, but as the evidence mounted, not just the evidence against Mr. Ghomeshi himself, but of the pervasive nature of this evil of sexual assault in our society, then we suddenly opened our eyes as a country and said, wow, this is a horrible thing in our society that's been tolerated and hidden and no more. We have three members of the team from the Toronto Star who are here to receive the award and say a few words to us. Please join me in recognizing Michael Cooke, editor of the Toronto Star, and journalists Emily Mathieu and Randy Risling for this outstanding work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for what you've done.
We wanted to start by thanking the Sidney Hillman Foundation for this incredible honor. The judges, and then our editor Kevin Donovan, Bert Bruiser, Jane Davenport, Michael Cooke, John Cruikshank, and John Hondrick, and the exceptional reporters, photographers, editors, friends, and everybody we have the privilege of working with and learning from every day. To the people who edited our copy, bought us copies, and kept us somewhat calm and on track during this process, thank you. You know who you are. All of us feel incredibly lucky to work for a paper that is willing to back the big stories and give reporters the time that they need to do that kind of work, which is particularly important if you decide you want to wade into an issue as vast and complex as sexual assault at post-secondary institutions. This story unofficially kicked off in July after Jamie started filling my email inbox with stories about sexual assault on university campuses in the US, how schools were handling complaints, and what, if anything, students could expect from their schools. that conversation quickly turned into what is happening here and what are Canadian schools doing about it. Now would be a good time to thank Kevin Donovan again, who, when we came to him with a very broad concept, pushed back at us by asking some tough questions, and if anyone knows Kevin, you know they were brutally tough questions, but also gave us the room we needed to report on what was happening in Canada. So the first bump or roadblock, particularly for people who enjoy data, which is probably lots of people in this crowd, is schools in Canada are not required by law, or were not required by law, I should say, to collect and present statistics on sexual assault. And for us, that was a pretty big clue that people weren't really keeping track of the problem. Next, we needed to find women. So we started reading student and local papers, trying to find clues that could lead us to people who were willing to tell their stories. We also reached out to student groups, healthcare workers, policy experts, lawyers, professors, and anybody who would listen to us, go for a coffee or a beer, or guide us in the right direction. Kind of a sad and notable point is very early on, it was very hard to convince women to talk to the star, and beyond that, to put anything about them that could identify them in the star, because they'd told their stories to so many people and it hadn't gone anywhere, or people had doubted what they were saying. And I would say a turning point was when Jamie tracked down Sarah. She was in the third part of our series, who had penned an anonymous editorial explaining how after she was assaulted at Lakehead University, she was shuffled between departments when she tried to obtain something as simple as a schedule change so she wouldn't have to see the man she said raped her when she walked into her class. Or in her words, the whole process made me feel horrible, like no one wanted to deal with me, like no one knew how to deal with me. And if people here haven't watched the video Randy created of her telling her story, you really should. And it is, like all of the ones that he produced for this project, amazing. So Sarah got her school attention. The principal launched a task force. It led to the creation of a policy or detailed document where Lakehead said it would not tolerate sexual violence, would provide support and accommodations for students who had been assaulted, and offered them a clear path to lodge complaints, as well as outlined sanctions for perpetrators. So we set up what we thought would be a very simple solution. We asked schools to send us our policies, and 102 responded, some sending as many as 5, which I guess was what they were using. And combing through those piles of paper revealed that the majority of schools were using policies more suited to dealing with academic misconduct, harassment, or even in some cases for bomb threats. Very few mentioned sexual assault or had any information on what someone could expect if they needed support or made a complaint. Some, and we found this very telling, contained no mention of sex. We all wanted to acknowledge the incredibly brave women who told us they hoped something good would come from their decision to speak out. So Tess, Jenny, and Sarah, and the women who were not named but who guided us through this process, thank you so much for trusting us with your stories. And again, and always, thank you to the Toronto Star for supporting the kind of work that can and does result in incredible change.
It sure is nice to be standing here before you tonight, and especially rewarding to be able to receive, on behalf of our reporters, the Canadian Hillman Award. We see it, I see it, you see it, as a magnificent validation of some magnificent work that gets action, work that really means something. At the Star, we've moved the investigative movement out of our 8-strong I-team of the last 2 or 3 years across the newsroom. And we have, I think, a strong sense of what role our journalism needs to play in the life of our city and sometimes the country. It would not happen without the enlightened owners who supply the money to drive our paper's mission. Represented here tonight by the chairman of the Toronto Star Board, John Hondrick, and our publisher, John Cruikshank. They ask that our reporting is correct and that we're accountable for it if we're not. I'll pause there. That we balance privacy rights against facts that are secret but could be in the public interest. That we are transparent about where we get our information, and that we protect our sources against attack from the courts or anyone else. Now, no editor and no set of reporters could ask for clearer instructions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Publisher. And now the Hillman judges, Jim, Bonnie, Tony, you beautiful, smart, intelligent people, thank you.